beloved young model vanished into the night after climbing into a black car with a friend. The investigation that followed would uncover secrets, lies, and a dark obsession. Surveillance clues led police to a mysterious figure caught making their way down a remote mountainside, barefoot and dazed. Lilu was born in 1992 in Sichuan, China. Friends and family would describe her as kind and outgoing. While in high school, she captured the attention of local modeling agencies. By the time she graduated from Wenzhou University in 2014 with a degree in fashion design, she had already made a name for herself in the modeling world. Unlike others in the business, she had shown that she could be successful without showing much of her body. Her conservative approach gained her respect and admiration. Despite all of her success, she remained close with friends and family. So when she went 2 days without responding to calls or texts, panic spread through her social circle. Her last post on Chinese social media app WeChat was on December 4th of 2015. It was a lighthearted post about having bad luck. 2 days later, on December 6th, she worked a modeling gig. Her last phone call was to her boyfriend Fu, around the time the job ended at 5 p.m. She told him that she was finished and she was ready to go home. He offered to pick her up, but she declined because a chauffeur service was available, and the drive was not a far one. This was the last phone call that Lu made. When Fu called her less than an hour later, she didn't answer. And when he called again at 7 p.m., her phone was turned off. The next day, on December 7th, when her friends couldn't reach her, one of them remembered that Lu had said she had a headache last time they spoke. The group of friends went to her apartment, but after each knock on her door, they were met with silence. The next day, police would be called, and this is where details begin to shed light on what friends never knew about Lu. When police were collecting information from her friends, they would say Lu was single, but she did have an ex-boyfriend named Edison. Her friends told police he was a nice guy, but they had broken up 2 months ago. Alarm bells went off when another model, who worked with Lu the last night anyone saw her, recalled how they shared a ride home together. They both lived in the same direction, so they agreed to take a car together. However, when they got into the car, she was surprised to see that the driver was Lu's ex-boyfriend. She didn't think much of it at the time, but later that night, after she was dropped off, she couldn't get a hold of Lu, so she sent a message to Edison asking if he was with her, and he replied yes. Her friend immediately texted back that they couldn't reach Lu and if he could please have her call them. He never responded, and afterwards, his and Lu's phones were turned off. As police decided to focus in on her ex-boyfriend Edison, they got a call from an informant. The informant was a man named Fu, who claimed to be her boyfriend. He said they hadn't gone public with their relationship, and he had phone records proving the relationship he and Lu shared. But why were they keeping it a secret? Why was her ex-boyfriend picking her up? And why has she disappeared without any indication something was wrong? Surveillance footage and information gathered from Fu would begin to paint a dark picture of the night Lu disappeared. All was not as simple as it seemed. Fu told authorities that he and Lu both felt very strongly about each other, but they were hesitant to share the relationship because of Lu's ex-boyfriend Edison. According to Fu, Edison had told Lu that he would harm himself when she broke things off in October, but she continued to see him and respond to his messages because she felt bad for him. But her empathy would cost her the ultimate price. Police got several cracks in the case when they recovered surveillance footage showing Edison's black sedan outside of a hotel, and Lu was clearly visible in the passenger seat. In the footage, you can see Edison trying to book a room inside the hotel lobby. Before he heads back out to the car, tries to make Lu get out, but after she refuses, he gets back into the car and speeds away. That wouldn't be the most chilling footage police would uncover. His car would be seen on another surveillance station in a place he had no reason to be. At 9:38 p.m. on December 6th, just 3 hours after Lu finished work, Edison's car was captured in a remote area in the mountains of Dushan. It was seen turning at a fork in the road, heading up the mountainside. It would appear again 6 hours later at 3:40 a.m., coming back down to the fork in the road. Only this time, Edison appeared to be the only person in the car. Police knew they had to find him and speak with him. News of her disappearance had captivated the people in Wenzhou, and when authorities released details about Edison's car in the mountains of Dushan, people organized to go there and search for her. Police arrived at the home Edison lived at with his parents early on December 9th. They were greeted by his mother, who provided additional details about Edison. She told authorities he came home early in the morning on December 7th, and he had blood on him and wounds on his hand. When she asked where he'd been and what had happened, he said he was at a festival in the mountains and he got into a fight with some guys, but told her not to worry and he was fine. She told police he'd never been a problem child, so she accepted what he had told her. He then stayed in his room playing video games for the rest of that day and the entire following day, until he abruptly left the house at 6 p.m. that evening. Upon hearing this, police immediately checked the surveillance station in the mountains to see if Edison had went back. And sure enough, his car was seen turning at the fork in the road about 9 p.m. the night before. It was safe to assume that he left his parents' house and drove back to the remote region. But why? Police would dispatch officers to the area to search for Edison, as his car had not left the area. At the same time, Lou's friends were there desperately hoping to find her safe. As they made their way through the dense forest, they discovered Edison's black sedan. When police looked inside, they instantly knew something was off. There was a burning smell when they opened the doors and charcoal in the back seat, leading them to believe someone had attempted to set the car aflame. Any hope of finding Lou alive and safe was all but lost when police pulled from the passenger side a bloodied fruit knife. But where was Lou? Sadly, the worst was yet to come. Authorities made their way to the rear of the car. Upon opening the trunk, they saw, amidst lots of clothing, lie Lou's body. It was clear she was gone. She had suffered multiple stab wounds to the chest, and she was covered in blood. With this tragic revelation, police knew they had to find Edison fast. That afternoon, as rain began to fall, a figure emerged at the fork in the road. It was a young man walking barefoot with clothes on his head. Police quickly apprehended the man, and after checking his ID, they verified that it was Edison. With Lou's killer in custody, police needed to find out what happened. Why did he kill her? During his interrogation, secrets, lies, and obsessions would come to light. Edison met Lou online playing a game together. He was 3 years older than her and told her he was a businessman who owned his own studio. After learning that she was a model, he became infatuated. They started hanging out, and he went to great lengths to impress her. He often took her to fancy dinners and would drive her home from work events. When things got romantic, friends would say he was the happiest they'd ever seen him, and always bragging that he had a model girlfriend. But the image he was projecting was not sustainable. Lou began to notice inconsistencies. He was not as hardworking as he claimed to be. He spent too much time playing video games, and he was pushy about meeting her family and moving the relationship forward. A breaking point was reached in October when they went on a trip together to an island resort. They were in the casino where Edison lost 50,000 yuan and demanded money from Lou, despite her telling him that if he lost her money, she wouldn't be able to pay rent. He didn't care and went on to lose the money. After they got back from the trip, Lou realized he had been lying about everything. He had no studio, no money, and no job. He lived with his parents and was borrowing their money to keep up an appearance. He was not the man she thought he was, and she broke up with him. Desperate to keep her in his life, he told her he would harm himself. Stuck in an uncomfortable position, Lou kept contact with him. She tried to transition to a friendship, but Edison had other plans. He became obsessed and would drive to her job sites and wait just to offer to drive her home. Eventually, she could feel his obsession growing to the point where she would rarely accept or tell him a different location altogether, just so he wouldn't be able to track her. But Edison was fixated. He would sit outside her apartment building just waiting for her to leave so he could track her movements. On the night of December 5th, he followed her home and watched as Lou brought her new boyfriend Fu up to her apartment. Edison sat outside the building all night, and by morning, when it was clear that her boyfriend spent the night, he was overflowing with rage. He posted on social media about being betrayed, and he planned his confrontation. He followed Lou to work, and when she got off, he told her he was nearby heading her direction, and he'd give her and her friend a ride. Lou made the mistake of accepting. After dropping her friend off, he drove to a hotel, telling police he wanted to go somewhere to talk to her where they wouldn't disturb others with any arguments. But after arriving there, Lou refused to get out and asked to just be taken home. Edison got back in the car and drove the opposite direction, towards a remote mountain range. When Lou refused to tell him details about her night with her new boyfriend, he snapped. He claimed he felt his intelligence was being insulted and he reached for something to hit her with. He told police he didn't realize he grabbed a knife until it was too late. I think we can all agree that it's bullshit. Nobody keeps a fruit knife in their car and would grab it not knowing it's a knife. He said he wanted to kill himself, but decided to see his parents one last time. So he dragged Lou out of the car and put her body into the trunk and drove home. After locking himself in his room to play video games, he grew paranoid when he saw the news about Lou's disappearance, and he drove back to the mountain. He told police he tried to kill himself with carbon monoxide in the car, but after that proved too hard, he instead walked into the forest, took some pills, and fell asleep. Shortly after waking up, he was apprehended by police. On August 24th, 2016, less than a year after Lou's murder, Edison was found guilty of intentional homicide by the Intermediate People's Court in Wenzhou City, and he was sentenced to death. Before his death, he was asked about the crime, and in response, he showed no remorse, basically saying, "What's done is done." Thankfully, China is swift with the justice whenever it comes to murders. Rest in peace to Lou, and hopefully her friends and family can find comfort in knowing that the monster who took her life will now lose his.